Welcome to APO Talk. Today we're having 58th APO Talk. And this is Ji Soo-yoon from Asian Productivity Organization. And we are broadcasting from Tokyo, Japan. APO is an intergovernmental organization with 21 member economies in the Asia Pacific. And APO serves as a think tank and provides consultancies to promote productivity, innovation, and competitiveness. For more information, please explore our website, APO, Asian Productivity Organization. Today, we're going to discuss inclusive urban planning, focusing on the built environment and spatial development. Statistics tells that if ongoing urbanization continues, 2/3 of the world's population is projected to live in urban areas. And according to the UN Habitat, 1 of the 3 urban residents in developing countries lives in slums without access to public services. So government needs to create more inclusive cities and to make sure that all people are benefited from urbanization for better living conditions for all walks of life. So urban planning is indispensable process, and today we invited Dr. Myounggu Kang to have in-depth discussion on addressing inclusiveness in urban planning. Dr. Myounggu Kang, he's a professor at Department of Urban Planning and Design, University of Seoul. He studied at MIT in the USA and Seoul National University in Korea. He has held various positions in academia and provided international consultancy to international organizations in African countries as well. And Dr. Kang has published widely on spatial development of cities, sustainable urban development, and smart city technologies, and been invited to participate in numerous international research projects, special presentations, and award ceremonies. Later, we're going to have interview with Professor Kang. So for this, we're getting questions from the viewers. So for our viewers, please leave your questions with your names and country in the live chat box. And before we start, may I invite Professor Kang to say hello to our viewers?
Hello, this is Myounggu Kang. Nice to meet you all. Although it's online, I hope to meet all you guys in person later on.
Hi, thank you. So we're very happy to invite you for this webinar today. So can we start with your presentation?
Okay. So yeah, again, it is a great honor to present my presentation here, and thank you for having me. So today's topic is inclusive urban planning. So this is inclusiveness is one of the key areas of the urban planning. Today I will focus on a little bit more focus on the physical built environment. Okay, so this is the outline. So I will give you some introduction about what that means about the inclusiveness of the city, and later I will show you a case of the 2 cities, and at the third, I will focus on the 3 topics: spatially inclusive urban planning, which means the provision of affordable and equitable land and housing, public spaces, and public services such as sanitation, water, etc. And I will conclude with some takeaways. So it's a brief introduction. Yeah, as moderator Yun already pointed, cities will determine the well-being of ourselves and our future generations, because most of the people, more than 2/3 at least, or more than like 3 out of 4 people will live in the city. So the quality of city will be the key of the well-being of our life. Cities have always been a hub of economic growth and innovation, culture, and creativity. So since the urban areas can provide high quality of life, that's because the majority of the people choose to live in the city. That will happen in a decade or so. And inclusiveness. So yeah, most of people will live in the city, but not all the people yet have the good quality of services in their life. So the question is, how can we make all the citizens get the good quality and benefit of the city, being in the city? And inclusive city actually mean, yeah, we can think of the three different dimensions. One is spatial, and the other one is economic and social. Spatial inclusiveness is the access to land, housing, and public spaces, and infrastructure or the services. And economic inclusiveness is the opportunities for all to contribute to the growing economy and enjoy its benefits. So everyone can have their jobs and income and can live up to the decent life. And social inclusiveness is also very important, and it's related to the rights and participation of all, including in this case most marginalized people is the concern. So to make a city more inclusive, we have to deal with this multidimensional issue, and these dimensions are interlinked. So at the same time, we have to tackle all these issues at the same time. But I will focus on spatial today. So in terms of the spatial problems of the rapidly growing cities, in terms of the inclusiveness, uh, the most problem starting from these supply issues. Uh, as you know, the population increase very fast, and immense number of the people is coming into the city and growing in the cities. So supply of land, housing, public space, and infrastructure, nowadays it's hard to keep up with the rising demand from more and more people moving into the cities. So for example, in the 1970s in Seoul, there was one toilet for every 100 or more people in slum areas in Seoul. So in that situation, it's hard to live as a quality life. So inadequate and underperforming physical assets, such as like infrastructure and water and sanitation. If we have a lack of such kind of the physical asset, which badly affect living conditions and also the reduced economic output, so it's hard to make ourselves out of poverty, and also it's to hinder social inclusion. So we have to make the city right in many ways. I spoke about the three dimensions, but spatial dimension is also a very key point. And in terms of the spatially inclusive city, I want to say 5 things. And out of 5, I will talk a little more focus on the 3 things. The first one is provision of affordable land and housing. So everyone, as a human being, we need a shelter which can help or protect from ourselves from like the disasters and rains and the cold weather. So everyone needs. So this the land and housing affect the ability of the urban poor to access services and economic opportunities, as well as to build their own assets. So the development of a potential of the land creates opportunity for a range of the creative instruments to foster inclusion. So as I will show you in the cases later, how we make and prepare the land and housing and supply of the land and housing affect a lot to the inclusiveness of the people and all the citizens, especially for the urban poor people. The second area is a provision of the public spaces. Public spaces is in many cases neglected because it's public. It's not owned by a certain person. So it is some tendency to neglect or disregard the importance of the public spaces. But public space is a key component to make city work and function properly. Public spaces are spaces open to the public, and it consists of the streets and pedestrian access, yeah, basically for the moving around, because every urban activities requires some form of the moving around by people or by the commodities. And the second type of the public space is open and green spaces, including like parks, waterfronts. Those the open spaces is important for the breathing and relax and leisure and the social gathering among the people. So we can make a meeting and we can have exchange ideas, yeah, simply over the public spaces too. And the third types of the public spaces are public facilities, such as like schools and hospitals and libraries. So public spaces are essential for social interactions among all the citizens, including the poor people. And it's also essential for the urban health and labor markets, environment, and so forth. And because it's a public, it's basically it's provided by for free to everyone. So public space is very important, especially for the poor people or marginalized people. And the third area of the spatial inclusive city is the public services or infrastructure. So infrastructure such as sanitation, water, energy, and waste management. Such kind of the infrastructure or the public services improves the quality of life and induce economic growth. Infrastructure plans requires inclusion as a key principle. Because when we plan and provide the infrastructure, we intentionally think about how to provide these services to the poor people or marginalized people. Otherwise, those services tend to focus only on the rich people. And the first one is connectivity and accessibility, or simply transportation. So people's ability to move to and from their homes to their workplace, schools, shops, health centers, and parks, by car, by walk, by foot, by bicycle. That movement, ability of movement is essential for growth and shared prosperity. And the fifth area is the information system. One of the key message of the planning, the basic is that we have to survey, investigate first before making a plan. So knowing about all the people and businesses, including those in the informal settlements and low-income areas, is the first step towards inclusionary urban planning. Because we have to know the people and their work, their life, their incomes, and their jobs. Then we can make a appropriate plan and effective outcome. So out of these five, I will talk the first three in this presentation. So before talking about the specific area, okay, let me show you the example of two cities, what happened last 50 years. So there are two cities. I call it city A and city B, simply speaking. And similarity between the two cities is both of the cities experienced the same growth of the people, so rapid urban growth in terms of population and geographic expansions. And at the beginning, like 50 years ago, two cities also have suffered from the lack of the income. So the GDP and economic output is lower. And also, consequently, the lack of the state investment capacity, basically the public budget and public capacity was low. But what city A differentiate from city B is in that like a proper urban planning. So the urban planning approach was different, and the vision and political will it's a little different, and the information system is different. So as a result, the one city shows more inclusive and sustainable city, and the other one is not that good. It has some problems. So let me see. So this is the population growth of city A and B. As you can see, the population around the 1960s, it's 15 and 60s is quite similar, 2-3 million. But after 30 years later, then around the 90s, it reached like 8, 9, or 10 million. So it's quite similar, and the speed. So in terms of the speed of economy, the population growth, on average, it's like a 300,000 people. It's increased over the last 30 decades. And in terms of the metropolitan area, it's a couple million to the almost 20 million. So in terms of population growth, in terms of number, in terms of speed, it's quite similar. And this is one city. So as you see from the picture, you can see the green spaces is well preserved around the city and the center. And this is the result of the properly planned development. And inside of the city looks like this. So it's a more inclusive and sustainable and clean, and the flow and walkable is high. So any citizen, anyone can use this city space. But this is the case, city B. As the people grow, it just expands further and further out. So I would say the plan is not adequate at the moment of this rapid growth, and the result is overconsumption of natural area. It cuts too much natural areas. So this is the result of the CTV. So this city actually is notorious about like pollutions and congestions and under economic performance. So, and the exclusive and unsustainable. So the question is, what makes this difference? Or how can it make more inclusive and sustainable throughout the planning? So in terms of land consumption, yeah, the first topic is the land. So city A and B, so the population size are similar, 9 million versus 10 million, but urban area is 2.5 times bigger, the city B. And in terms of urbanized land, so developed land is much bigger in city B. So the population density is higher in the city A. That means in city A, the land consumption rate is less than 1/3, which means each individual citizen consume less than 1/3 of the land compared to the city B. So it's more compact development. If you compare the metro area, it's even the bigger problem. But the issue is still many the developing world cities building this way, like a city B looks like a development. It's going further and further out, low density, single use, pretty much residential only types of. It's a 20th century, last century ideas of the urban development. Mainly because individual as the person like this kind of the arrangement, because as you can see from the presentation, it's individual house and individual cars. So people like to have such kind of environment. But the urban consequences, the collective consequences of this kind of the development looks like a CTV. And even further, although this kind of the development looks green and clean, but next year and a couple of later, another development will be happen in the outside of this development. So another green spaces will be removed. So it just continue, and the insider area is get worse and worse. So that's the result of the CTV. So it's basically just sprawl. So this picture shows there is some visual illusion, because this picture looks like a green, but actually the result is the opposite. This picture is too much destruction of the natural land, and it causes more congestion and more pollution. So we have make more cities in a compact and sustainable way. So let's talk about the land and housing issues. So when we face the rapid population growth, there are basically I show the two ways of the accommodation, two ways of the urban land supply. One is simply just expansion, as we saw in the last slide, just develop additional development at the skirt of the city and at the edge, and again and again and again. But it ends up being with more congestion and pollution and crowded. But the other option is more planned development and compact development and concentration of the development with public transportation. Then we can achieve more eco-friendly and clean, sustainable, and inclusive the city. So this is an example of the Seoul case. So Seoul metropolitan area developed the master plan in the 1966. This is the first master plan of Seoul metropolitan area. So at that time, population was expected to grow from 2.5 million to the 5 million. So basically, the population would double by the forecasting projections. So what we decided is, okay, we need more urban land to accommodate those new incoming population. So simply we double up the urban land around the existing urban cores. And then we set the green belt, which means no development at all area. So the natural area preservation area, just outside of such developments. And then we also put 7 new towns as urban cores to accommodate more than like 3 million people. So that kind of the compact development, constant development with a public transportation link result in the bottom. This is the satellite image. So as you can see in the 1957 to the 2005. So population was like about million in the 1960s, and 2005 it's almost reached up to like 20 million. But in terms of land consumption, it's constrained less than 3 times. So the population increased more than 10 times, but we could successfully control our land consumption and make this green area. So let me just add one more comment about the new town development, because there is some misconception about new towns. So new town is destruction or preservation of the environment or natural areas. And the answer is actually it was a good preservation method especially when the city grew rapidly and massively. So in the Seoul case, this 1990s, our population grew, ever grow again and again, and doubled and tripled. So at the upper image, so the new town is convert green areas to the urban areas, built areas. But in the bottom, the picture shows we can plan in a sustainable way to to for the people, especially for the marginalized people. So if a new town is developed in a right way at right time and right location, it is a good tool to preserve the natural areas and enable sustainable and inclusive development. I'm not saying any time or any location, any way of the plan. It needs to be the right plan and right time and right location. Then it is a very effective the tool to preserve the natural area and make a more sustainable and inclusive the city. So in many Asian the countries are now experiencing rapid population growth, rapid urbanization. So just assume if your city needs to accommodate 3 million more people in the future, in 10 years later and 28 later, which urban pattern would you choose? One is 7 new towns, like a Seoul case, with a public transportation, or hundreds of suburban residential complexes with cars, like a B. So the A is more inclusive and sustainable way compared. But so that's the one thing. So we need to supply the land and housing, but how to supply and land, it's important for the sustainability and inclusiveness. And in addition, in terms of the land use, conventionally the urban planning promote more like a single use. But today, the 21st century, we promote the mixed use. Because the 20th century, the the urban planners believed we want to separate and low density out of the factory, smoking, or polluted urban areas. But nowadays, it has changed a lot. And out of the single-use pattern, we learn some lessons. So the separating impactable land uses such as polluting industry and housing is a rational decision in the past, in 100 years ago. In the early 20th century, modern planning promoted monofunctional use, especially separating housing from workplaces and commercial and social use. Residential areas were also designed for the homogeneous income groups. As a result, we saw the segregation and separations, and it's less inclusive. So this approach, the single use, the negative side of single use is it hinders the access to urban amenities of low income groups and different ethnic background, thus reducing the opportunities for the civic interactions and social integration. And also the single use types of the planning has economic opportunity cost because it preclude the synergies and mutual stimulation among productive activities. And single use, together with the low density, increase the use of individual mobility, simply the cars. So it erodes the vitality of the public transport network, further reinforcing the exclusion of the less privileged. So the benefit of mixed-use development, there are many. Social benefit is improving the accessibility to services and urban amenities for a broad segment of a population, including the poor people, and increases the housing options for diverse household types. It also enhances the safety of an area by increasing the number of people on the street. Economic benefit is also the big, so increasing the business potential of the transactions and trade as collocation of activities attracts more potential customers during more hours of the day. This is reflected in the increased income from the business tax. So commercial use in close proximity to residential areas are often reflected in the higher property values. So the economic benefit is high. And there is also the direct infrastructure benefit because the mixed use reduces the overall demand for commuter travel and shortening the average trip length and reduce car use. So we don't need the big transportation investment. In addition to minimizing road infrastructure requirements and reduce the amount of land allocation parking, mixed land use also provides a great basis for using public transport and walking and biking. So, and then the second area is a public space. And the quantity, quality, and spatial configuration is very important in public space. So high quality public space, open, inclusive, and accessible to all, regardless of the gender, race, ethnicity, age, or socioeconomic level, is a key driver of urban sustainability and inclusive development. It is the existence of the public space that ensures accessibility to plots and buildings and supports mobility. This is why the most of part of the public space is for the flow, the streets and the pedestrian ways. It is in public space that basic service network can be located. This is another important role of the public space and the streets. All the public services like drainage, sewerage, and water supplies, electricity networks, that all located under the public space. It cannot go under like a private house. So without public space, it would be impossible to introduce new infrastructure such as communication cables, and private property would not function. So insufficient public space will stifle the possibility of private investment. So the ratio of the 50% of the public space is common in successful cities. Manhattan, Barcelona, Brussels, even Paris, almost all in Seoul have up to 35% of the city area allocated to the street space, and additional 15% for other public uses, including parks and the public facilities. So how to make that happen? This is one example of the Seoul. So the Seoul was formed 500-600 years ago. So it has a traditional configuration like left pictures. So the land is occupied by the private owners. It pretty much looks like an agricultural area, although it's a heart of the city. So in the left diagram, it's hard to provide public services because it's all privately owned. So we have to secure the public space out of these private spaces. So we have to basically convert the private ownership to the public ownership. So it's very hard. And one of the effective tools we learned is the land readjustment. So yeah, I cannot explain the detail, but as a result, what we've done is in the right diagram. So we can secure all these public spaces. It's the name of the street, and so this is for the moving space for the moving of people and the commodities, and also this is the space for delivering all the services like a water supply, electric supply, and garbage collection, trash collection, or some emergency access. So it's like a blood the vein, like it delivers all the nutritions and connect, so make all the city puzzles the function properly and make it live. So that kind of change is very important. And second thing is in terms of the quantity. So how much the street space required. So in general, rule of thumb is about 1/3. So here, the Manhattan is 36%. Belgium is one of the European cities, 33%, 25%. Barcelona is 33%. But compared with the developing world like Kenya, Nairobi, and Philippines, Manila, India, Mumbai, it's about 10. And in the 1960s and 70s, Seoul has the similar number, like less than 10%. So that's why we have to convert to the public spaces. And second thing is the spatial pattern, the shape, size, distribution of the street and public spaces. In this diagram, it shows the street network spatial pattern. So in the left, this is one of the traditional 20th century modernist urban planning. So mostly it's like a cul-de-sac, it's closed. And so if you want to go to school living in this house, usually they have to make a long distance. So that's why we need to car, and it's a monotonous neighborhood. But if you want to build a neighborhood looks like this, a kids living in this house can walk to the school in a short distance and short time and vibrant neighborhood. So left one is the conventional planning practice. So in the 20th century, actually planning promote and recommend the left types of the development. But the 21st century, the planner realized the right pattern, the right diagram is the better and right. So we are also switching to. But unfortunately, many developing world follow the old ideas. Yeah, so we have to keep up to the up-to-date, the new the practice pattern. And the last, not the least one is quality of the public space. In this case, I bring up the street quality for the inclusive city. So the street, making the street or plan street, we need the holistically approach is needed. It's a public space. It's not just the space for the car. So in that sense, we have to integrate land use, transportation, and green infrastructure, public spaces at the same time, not only for the transportation or car moving oriented space. And by doing so, we want to promote bring the public life, which means some interactions with neighborhood, interactions with other peoples, more exchanges, collaboration, cooperation, which are important for the innovations, productivity, and economic growth, and inclusiveness and opportunities. And in terms of the accessibility, we also need to consider needs of all people, including all ages, and all abilities, and all socioeconomic background. So we also need to think about the poor people can use this space as a public space. And integrating planning for all modes of travel, which means walking, bicycle, car, bus, or sometimes subways. And so not just for car or not just for one thing, because we need all those modes depending upon our needs. So integrate planning for the all modes travel is also important. And also, we need to think about not the local, at the city level or regional level connectivity. Yeah, we sometimes need to go far away to reach a certain area. So connectivity and reliability of the broader transportation network, go to the region area, provincial area, or other part of the city and the nation area. Okay, and open and green spaces, such as parks and squares. So the public spaces, especially the open and green spaces, can play a key role in social inclusion by acting as a places for dialogue and exchange. Such gathering spaces allow for social mixing, civic participation, and a sense of belongings. Public space can also be used for daily events, seasonal or annual fairs that bring together diverse population of the city. So planners need to look carefully at the informal economy in public places too, and provide space for the entrepreneurship. Especially the low-income people has to have some opportunity of business activities. And it is necessary to provide the disadvantaged urban areas with a quality public space. especially like slum areas or the squatter areas, we need to provide the public space with quality public space. And it will promote diverse use of the public space and encourage social mixing from different backgrounds and socioeconomic conditions, and removes physical barriers that may isolate certain areas. So the open space is a kind of the linking hubs, linking each other. Uh, so so one of the case of Seoul is open and green spaces. So in terms of the land use, about 32% of the land of Seoul is forest and open space, and 8% river and stream. So about 40% of the land is open space and river and waterfront, and plus 5% of the public facilities, including schools and libraries, those facilities, community centers. So 45% of the lands for public. And on the map, you can see the distributions. Okay, it's not just concentrated one area or big area. It depends on, but it needs to be allocated, spread all over the city, and right size, right location, and right networks. And public space also has this very micro level of the quality management. So good quality of public space need to be developed and maintained and continue to promote inclusion and exchange. And one of the example from the recent example happening in the 2002 was the restoration of a stream in the downtown Seoul. So this area in this picture is highways, elevated highways and road. It's a 16 lanes of road, and this part of the area is the center of the city, and it was the center of the businesses. And in 2002, Seoul decided to switch to the open stream, and we did, and it changed all the urbanscapes in the downtown area. Actually, downtown area was decaying and deteriorated, but after this public space provision, the downtown area is revived, and new businesses coming and new opportunities coming. So it also helps the poor people and marginalized people. And services, sanitation, water, waste, energy, electricity, gas, telecommunication. Yeah, it's hard to explain everything. I just want to emphasize this sanitation part, especially under the COVID virus issue. Like sanitation, our population growth dramatically outpaced gains in access to sanitation. So we need a clean and healthy environment. So only 37% of the human waste is safely managed globally. So like more than half of the human waste is just simply thrown away in some part of the land. So urban sanitation crisis is stifling the life of the citizens, especially the low-income people. So inadequate sanitation leads to the degradation of the public health and environment, which affect high child mortality and morbidity, poor school attendance and performance, and low productivity, especially for the low-income groups. So cities need sanitation improvement, including the potable water, fresh water, drinking water, and sewers, drainage, and so forth. And those human waste must be safely managed in ways that safeguard the urban environment, including water and food supplies. In 2007, there was an interesting kind of the poll vote. Readers of the British Medical Journal chose the sanitary revolution, which means making the city safe and clean and healthy. It's the greatest medical advance since 1840. So that's most important, somehow so innovative event, make all the people safe and healthy. So In 2017, an estimated 3 billion people worldwide. 3 billion is almost a half, 40% of the people in the world lack the ability to safely wash their hands at home. Washing hands with clean water is one of the cheapest and easiest and most effective ways to prevent the spread of disease, like the coronavirus. So water is essential, not only to health, but also to poverty reduction, food security, and peace and human rights, ecosystem, and education. So that's not just a pipeline or the infrastructure. It has a very propounding meaning. It helps and it becomes a base of the human dignity. So safe and affordable drinking water for all requires investment in adequate infrastructure, provide sanitation facilities, and increase hygiene. Protecting and restoring water-related ecosystem also essential. That's why we need to preserve the natural area. Otherwise, we cannot have the source of the data, clean the source of the water resources. So in terms of inequality, poorest group tends to have a very less support by the public services compared to the richest or rich people. So in providing this kind of infrastructure tends to skew toward the more rich people or rich people areas. That's why we call for more intentional effort, more effort to provide such kind of the public services toward the low-income people and low-income areas. So access to the municipal services such as water, sanitation, waste management, transport, shelter, electricity, and protection against the human-made or natural hazard. The poor are usually poorly served by the urban infrastructure, leading to a range of the problems, exacerbating the poverty. So targeted investment in strategic infrastructure and strategic location or improvement can stimulate proper economic growth and development, leading to economic generation, income generation, and improved livelihood for the urban poor. And by targeting benefit to the poor and the most vulnerable areas, infrastructure project can make a significant impact on slum eradication and poverty reduction through the enhanced provision of basic services. And it will increase the participation to the economic activities, among many others. The targeted approach focusing on the urban poor on vulnerable areas where the urban poor live directly provide them equal access to the service. So citywide infrastructure investment also eventually benefit the urban poor from the overall economic uplift. Okay, the summary, some takeaways. So the first one is that the concept of inclusion in cities is complex due to the many factors involved which can be mutually reinforcing. So the key to make inclusive city is to address the issue in multidimensional and integrated way. And reactive versus proactive approaches. So planners need to anticipate and plan for the future, not just today's issue, the future urban growth, rather than focusing on the costly after the fact retrofitting. So more proactive approach, proactive plan, proactive action is required to make the city inclusive. And we talk about the urban planning for the spatial inclusivity in terms of land and housing and public space and public services. We didn't have chance to talk much about the accessibility and information system, but those components are also very important. So urban planning is a social tool to prevent the penny-wise and pound-foolish, which means we can save a lot of money and we can leverage this opportunity to make the city more inclusive. So in a city, individuals may incur a great loss by pursuing a small her own immediate interests, as we saw in the city B. So the people as an individual may like to have such kind of small home, my car, my home at the suburban area. But as a whole, including themselves and all of the citizens, it has some negative effect on everybody. So lastly, I want to remind about inclusive urban planning. If inclusion is tackled through only spatial lens to open, the other factors, economic and social, hurts. Because if we make one area is make it better, it could kick the poor people out of the space and sometimes could make worse their lives. So we need to understand the interlinkage characteristics between the spatial, economic, and social. And because this is interlinkage characteristics, we have to approach the problem from the integrated way. That's why we need the planning to overall and integrate and harmonizing these factors. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Professor Kang. I think it addresses many good essential points for inclusive urban planning, and the core message across the slides would be that we have to reflect not only the spatial lens but also economic and social lenses, taking an integrated approach for developing an inclusive city. And you pointed out that the diagnosis before treatment, which requires the information system, and most developing countries, maybe the less developed countries, would not have the data sets or public data management system in their countries. So there could be some difficulties to implement the inclusive city planning. So in this situation, what do you advise or recommend the strategy for the information system?
Okay, yes, information system. Yeah, first thing of the planning to make a more effective plan or more outcome-oriented plan, we need to know about the people and their life, their jobs and incomes, what they do, and what was the condition of their lives and housings in neighborhood. That's why the information and data is required before making a good solution or plan. But as the moderator Yun pointed, many developing world cities has suffered from the lack of the information and data about the low-income people, especially. But thankfully nowadays, we have more and more good technology, so-called the smart city technology. So there is many other informal or the so-called is a big data from the transaction and like a cell phone data and more the transaction or sometimes satellite images, aerial photos and sensors, and we also have some gas and electricity uses data, so we can utilize those undercover the data to make a good city and knowing about the people and their lives. So so at the same time of the making an inclusive city, it's kind of the parallel. We also need to develop the good data gathering, the tools, and collect the data and managing the data into the good information system.
Okay, thank you. And I think another important issue is that, like presented in your slides, like there's comparison between conventional single use of land and then today's mixed use of land. And based on your explanation, it assumes that today's mixed use of land is more appropriate to develop an inclusive city. So, for example, like multifunctional mix of land, the land use, it's explains the residential area and business areas, they combine together. And even within the business area, it's not just single business type industry, but different diverse type of industries, such as digital companies and maybe fashion companies, food companies. So it's all mixed up, complex area development. And I think this provides implications to APO member countries as well as beyond APO member countries, because there is a myth. Many countries believe that maybe single focused type of district development would increase the efficiency and brings more profits to their business development. So in this sense, can you provide more elaborations on how and why today's mixed use land brings more benefits socially and economically?
So yeah, today's not today's, like a 20th modernist urban planning is set around the early 1900s. So it's about 100 years ago. And back then, the businesses means manufacturing, and most manufacturing, yeah, old days is simply regarded as a polluting machine, like emitting lots of bad airs and bad waters, waste waters, dirty waters and noises. So back then, the planning practice, when the practice is set, one of the tool is the separating residential areas from the basically industrial areas or business areas, and that practice is just continue without some the critics. We haven't thought much about the change in the economies and business. So as you may know, most of the business nowadays is service sector. It's more than like 60 to 70% of the economic activities and jobs in the service sector, which is far from like a polluting factory types of the industry. And also, even in the manufacturing and businesses, nowadays most of the economic activities is also, it's clean. It's more like a knowledge based and office types of work. So 100 years ago's ideas doesn't fit today's changed in the socio-economic environment. So it's kind of the update our planning practice to meet the new the changed world. And that's the one. And the second one is by putting these different functions and different businesses and residential businesses close, that has many benefits. As I discussed in the presentation, it helps to reduce the supply of the infrastructure, because we are living together and work together closely. So yeah, simply we don't need that much road, and we don't need that much destruction of the natural areas. And also in terms of the economic development and innovation development, one of the important part of the innovation is the knowledge exchange and collaboration. And sometimes they gathered from different fields of the people and exchange the ideas and make a new product and new businesses. So in that sense, because to reflect the changed world socio-economic environment, and to promote more innovation and more economic growth and more inclusive, that's why the more mixed-use development is the promoted nowadays.
Okay, thank you for your answer. We've got a question from our viewer. She's from Philippines, Ms. Rakko. She asked that the cities and municipalities in the Philippines prepare a separate plan for its land, and not maybe there's another plan for the sectors. I guess maybe business sectors. We're not very sure about this, but the cities and municipalities maybe they have different types of plans. So in this case, would you suggest to have these two different plans to be integrated?
It has to be integrated. That's the urban planning. So in many, the cities have like a transportation plan, environment plan, more housing plan. But the name of the urban planning means we are trying to integrate at the city level, because the city we share, all the citizen, all the plans shared. So in a city we have a transportation infrastructure, water infrastructure, and all the housing and land. So by putting all together, we can make a better or effective and efficient the plan. But yeah, it's true. In most the cities, the conventional way is just doing by sectors and the sectoral approach. But out of the experience of last 50 and 100 years of the urban development, the sectoral development is not enough. It has some limitation and problems. So we have to go beyond the sectoral approach. That's why the urban planning is coming in. So urban planning is a tool to integrate all those sectors into the one city plan. So it's not easy because it's a collaboration among or beyond the silos of each sectors, and cross the department is not easy. That's why another the successful urban planning cities has very strong leadership. So the leadership need to lead or integrate all the sectors into the one good city, or one inclusive city, instead of each sector individual city.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There were different sectors that you, as you suggested, in your slides. For example, the public space was one of the parts. And I've also read some articles regarding the importance of public space, such as the numbers and size of public parks in the cities. And because compared to the parks, like the shops are a little bit different, because it's not open admission, and you have to pay for the, for example, like coffee shops, you have to pay for the table, pay for the coffee. So people only who pay can enter the place and enjoy the area. And some people say that it's another type of segregation of the contemporary society. So it might affect and represent the whole atmosphere of the city, of the country. So we're wondering, like, is there any considerations of increasing public spaces in this regard in Seoul or in any other cities in the world?
Okay. First of all, I really appreciate your point about the public space. Public space is very important, but because it's a public, so it's disregarded in many cities. In most people just don't care about the public space because it's not mine, kind of. But just think about some city. Imagine a city without public space, which means all occupied by the private entity. So that city doesn't function at all, because there is room to move, flow, and mobility, and there is no room for provide all the public services, including the water and sanitation, electricity. So it's not function at all. There is no room to breathe. So yeah, we need public space. And we need to maintain good quality and spatial configuration, spatial pattern of public space. Very, very important to make the city function well, properly. Then leads to the economic growth and the poverty reduction and inclusive the development, sustainable development. So that's very important. And regarding your question about like the private space, like a cafe, but I don't agree with the writer you mentioned, because the cafe, yeah, it's the private areas, but relatively it's a cheap place to have some certain area, certain services. So nowadays, planner recognize those space called the privately owned public space, which means it's a private property, but in terms of accessibility, so everyone can access and use. So such as, for example, like a shopping mall, it's a private property, but people sometimes go there and make a gathering, meeting, and exchange ideas, make something happen. So that's the social the exchange is good, and in like a shopping mall, yeah, many different diverse groups of people from the rich to the poor people can access to that area and share such area. So there is a potential to utilize those privately owned space, but for the public interest, some promoting the public space like behavior. So cafe is one of the part of the, yeah, although it says a private, but there is a potential and there is a some possibility to make that that area is function like a public space and promote more inclusive city. So it's not a separation, but it also needs to be promoted, those kind of areas. It's because basically a space for the public social activities. Social activities means some activities with other people. Yeah, for example, like uh, entrepreneurs or innovators, they can meet each other at the cafe and exchange ideas, or sometimes some people just work there in the cafe and make some report and analysis. So it is true, we might need to pay for a cup of coffee or tea, but it's relatively less expensive option to use those services and areas for the social activities. So nowadays, more and more we are thinking those areas open to the space, privately owned, but there is a potential. So we call it a privately owned public space, and it's also one of the one kind of the public space for the social inclusion.
Okay, thank you. So to dive into your answer, your discussion, maybe one slide that shows the land allocation to streets. That's very, very, very public space, streets, and maybe it's just representative of a public place in your slide now. But I thought it would be very interesting if we see the relations between the inclusive city ranking around the world to the land allocation to streets or any other type of public space in this regard. So how do you find the relation?
Yeah, there are many rankings about the city, but there is no direct the ranking system of the inclusiveness, but we measure the inclusiveness through the like equality issues or poverty reductions and less the percent of the poor peoples in the city. But the statistics shows the low percent of the poor people or the more the productivity growth is strongly related to the open space and public space in terms of the spatial, because as the function, the open space is the space for moving and meeting and gathering and exchanging. So it promotes such kind of the socio-economic activities among citizens and businesses, even with the foreigners. That's the public space. With the public space, we can have such kind of activities. And with the public space, especially the street, so that makes less congestion city that has more outcome of economic growth, because it's easy to doing the businesses in that areas. less cost in terms of the transportation. So it promotes more the growth and the inclusive city. So there are many cases and the data, and yeah, there is the good relationship with the open space, public space, and inclusiveness and economic growth.
Okay, thank you. We've got another question from our viewer. She's from the Philippines, Ms. Michelle. She asked, like, how do we ensure that creating high density residential areas such as apartments will not result in high cost of rent or housing? Maybe it could be a discussion of another sector. That's could you provide your thoughts?
Okay, so usually we think it's related like high density and high cost, but yeah, it's for example like a Seoul case, there are many high density but low cost area too. So it's not related to the like high density or high rise building and the high cost. It's not naturally connected. It's more social the dimension of the mechanism. So make a certain type of housing it's less expensive and affordable does not mean like low density or not high density. It's not linked. Or for example, like in Singapore cases, yeah, it's a high density or high rise, but in good sense of the affordability is there. So it's not types of building. Okay, it's more like a planning and land supply and the social issues of the cost and the price. So yeah, even you may know the low density but very expensive areas like a single detached housing area. So the cost or price is not directly related to the form or types of the building. So yeah, there is a possibility. It's hard to explain at this short time, but yeah, it's not. You can make it. Yeah, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more directly related to housing price policy by the government. And we've got another question from Mr. Rakol from Philippines. In terms of transportation, how do we make transportation more inclusive for the poor in the cities?
So the basics of the transportation is we want to promote the mobility. Okay, so people, yeah, we want to enable the people moving from their homes to the work and school for education, jobs, workplaces for jobs and income, to the shopping mall for the shopping and leisure places. So the mobility is a key issue. And the first thing is we try to promote the walking distance, walking neighborhood. So then we don't need a car. That's the one. But at the urban level and city level, yeah, the distance beyond like kilometers and a couple of kilometers over beyond the spaces, yeah, we definitely need another the vehicle. It could be car, could be bus, it could be subways. So more inclusive transportation, the first thing is massive investment in the public transportation. So public transportation need to cover all over the city areas, not just a part or certain part of the space. So if you see the Seoul case and Japan and Tokyo, the subway or bus system is covered all over the areas. There is no area left behind. And then that's the one. So we need a certain the vehicle to move around beyond the walking distance. And nowadays, bicycle is too. So that's the one. It's a physical asset. We need infrastructure. And second one is the finance, because the inclusive means it should be the affordable too for the poor people, not expensive. So so there are many the policies regulations to help. For example, one of the supplementary the policy in Seoul is we collect the extra money for the car users and gas users and use the money to subsidy the public transportation. It's kind of the cross subsidy ideas to lower the cost of the transportation users. So as a result, in Korea, so the public transportation ride is just $1 for almost every corner of the Seoul. So the first thing is the infrastructure, and the second thing is make it affordable through many. Yeah, there are many possible ways, like cross subsidies or public budget or other possible way of doing so. Yeah, think of it, but at least we have the infrastructure and we need some policy scheme to lower the price.
Okay, thank you. Due to time constraints, maybe this will be the last question. This is an open question to have your insights for APO Talk. So the mission of APO Vision 2025 is more inclusive, innovation-led productivity growth. And how do you see the inclusive urban planning contributes to the APO Vision 2025?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. To achieve the APO vision, yeah, inclusive urban planning is essential and inevitable. It should be a part of the vision and action, because two ways. The first one is, yeah, we want to promote innovation and creative ideas, and the study confirmed that where those kind of the new ideas, inventions, new economic opportunities coming from is social interactions. So meet each other, new ideas, and yeah, for example, like Silicon Valley, more than half of the innovators comes from the abroad. They were born in the different country and come there and meet there and exchange ideas and come up with a new product and new way of businesses. So the social interaction and exchange ideas and meeting each other is the key activity to make those kind of innovation is possible. So to promote the innovation itself, the inclusive urban planning is important. And second, the reason is innovation-based economic growth. There is a potential possibility of negative result of inequality. So there can be many winners on more money and more opportunity, but this kind of the technology-led development is not so good for the low-educated people and low-skilled people. So it could aggravate, make the worse the equality status. So try to make the inclusive city could guarantee the benefit from the innovation-led development toward all the citizens. So all the citizens, including the low-income people or marginalized people, can have opportunity and have the benefit out of the development. So inclusive urban planning is necessary to achieve this APO vision. First, because it promotes innovation itself. The second is it secures more inclusive social life for all the citizens.
Okay, thank you. And we're getting to the end of this talk, so let me summarize what we have discussed so far. To share the lessons that I've learned from you today, especially with regard to the spatial development, urban planning is more like frame development of the cities, like which areas will be the residential area, business area, or the public area for the mixed use of land of the city. And by mapping the different types of districts like that, it's almost like it's rule setting, and then the people are following the rules. Because if there's a road, streets in this way, then people have to go and use the streets to that direction. And it's very important because it determines people's behavioral patterns. So if the city is developed in an inclusive way, then the people doing that, going that way, it's something inclusive. And if it's developed in an exclusive way, then the way people is doing is something the vice versa. So it's very important. And for this reason, we have to adopt the social and economic considerations to take the integrated approach to develop the inclusive city. So, for example, we're talking about public parks where all citizens can enjoy, and public transportations as a daily commuting mode for all walks of life, and the public sanitation, water quality that leads to public health for all citizens, including the marginalized people. So we structure barrierless society that avoids segregation, and it takes time and cost, but it's a sustainable way to maintain social security. So in this sense, we really encourage our viewers and our member countries to share these videos with their colleagues and friends to adopt our approach, our discussions that we had. And before we finish, can I invite Professor Kang to leave closing message to our viewers?
Oh, okay. So again, it's a great honor. It's a great fun to exchange my ideas with you guys. So, and I hope everyone achieve your cities more inclusive and sustainable in the near future. And the most important thing, this time of moment would be a great opportunity to make your cities more inclusive and sustainable, because it's hard to fix later once the city is has not good informed. So it's better action early, like a proactive action to make city before the problem is happening. So I hope you push further to make your city more inclusive and sustainable in the near soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And before we wrap up, let me make a correction, because I said it at the beginning of this webinar. I said that this is 50th and 50th video series, but actually it's 49 videos. So we're very sorry for this. And the next video will be the 50th. And thank you for your understanding. And it's time to wrap up. So please stay safe and healthy, everyone. And thanks for joining us today. And we want to see you in another P Talk. Thank you very much.